Talk to this computer, and it's recording, and we're away. I'll just wait for Rose to pop back. Everything seems to be good, and it is recording still. Okay, let's go. Great. Firstly, hope you're well. Difficult times, we know. I'm going to do my best, Khan Academy. Khan Academy, anything to report? Anything drastic happened, everyone? You can see my screen now, yes, please. Can everyone see my screen? Yep, great, thanks, Beck. Yep. Oh, good. There you go, just a little problem our end. Okay, right, let's get crack-a-lackin'. Let's go to slideshow and we'll play from the start. And I'll get my magic pen just because I want to annoy you. And I'm very, very good at doing that, apparently. Okay. Well, this is where we left off, folks. Yes? This is where we left off. This is us. We understand our version, our evidence-based story of how we got here, how we as a species, as Homo sapiens, arrived. And we didn't just appear. We're the product of a long time of evolution, and we can trace our ancestry back through our genus of Homo and then into the bipedal apes of Southern Africa. We go back 7 million years and we see a split in the primate family, and we can trace the primate family right back to the early mammals. If we want to go back further and further and further and further, we all know we can arrive back at Luca, which Luca, of course, is our last universal ancestor. So many of you have completed online test 2, just a few more to go. Remember, we have one more online test to go, and it's going to be taking questions from all the thresholds. So you've got some good coverage, but you still have to be revising this stuff. So very, very interesting. Okay. What's more interesting is, you've got to remember, our species got down to about 10,000 adults. So when you hear someone say they've done a DNA test and they're a direct descendant of William the Conqueror or some crap, so what? So are you. We're all pretty related. We got down to 10,000 individuals. That is just crazy. And our species has only been around for 200,000 years. And in geological time, that ain't nothing. Okay, I'm just going to close something down here. Right. Okay, so remember, Rose is here in the chat room. Yep, Rose is in the chat room. So ask questions and stop. But we're just doing a little recovery. So the whole thing's extremely chancy, isn't it? Meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. Just last week, we had a fairly large meteor go past Earth. In our minds, it was a long, long way away. In space measurements, it wasn't too far. It was a near miss. So it's just a chancy business, this whole thing of life. So that's where we're up to. And what emerged was our understanding of collective learning. And this is the big one. This is our big ticket item. Yeah, this is the thing that changes us the most. I'll just fiddle now. I'll just get my eraser pen. There you go. Back to my pen. I love this stuff. So, oops, I lost my pen. Sorry. So this is where we're kicking off from. Collective learning. A lot of things happen with collective learning. Yeah. And remember poor old Neanderthal who started here and finished here. So there's 1 million years. And in 1 million years, it pretty much flatlined. They didn't learn pass much on from each other. We know this because what we found in Neanderthal's settlements and caves and sites here were pretty much the same as what we found 1 million years ago. Our species has only been around for a couple 100,000 years. So from here to here, this is where our collective learning started. We had little climbs along the way because we were quite adaptable. And about 12,000 years ago, what's going on? You know the story. About 12,000 years ago, our collective learning took us with our knowledge up here. So, 12,000 years ago, a couple of 100 years ago, our lifetimes. Go away. All right. So this whole thing of complex language really allows us to pass information on. So I'm assuming, any questions so far? We'll just stop and pause breath. Oh, what's going on? Questions? All good. Thanks, Isabel. Thanks. Great. Thanks, guys. I'd just like to check in. So, complex language, really, really important. With complex language, and how do we get complex language? Well, there were some physical changes to us, and we had some changes in our physiology as a species, okay? The way our heads with our large brains expanded, the size of our neck, the shape of our throats, the smaller amount of teeth in our mouth, we could make sounds. We could develop languages, and then we could write things down. So unlike Neanderthals, we could build on knowledge from one generation to the next, yeah, which is really good. Now, early on, those steps were little steps, lots and lots of little steps. They got much more rapid as we got to agriculture, and then we start taking these giant steps with technology. Okay, is my pen annoying you? Because I'm having a ball. No, I'm not. I'm just mucking things up now. How do I get rid of this? That one, yeah. Yeah. Laughing at me. I can see what's happening here. Okay, so this idea of knowledge accumulating over time takes us to our next threshold. Everyone's having a good laugh. Good on you, Tess. Jessica, laughing at the old man with his technology. So here's our new threshold, the appearance of agriculture. And it's quite significant. And we're going to look into understanding it. Because it gave us a couple of things. We had an energy bonanza here with agriculture. One of the big advantages was we did have an energy bonanza, an energy revolution, if you like, because we domesticated animals. Yeah, we still measure things in horsepower. Yeah, but when we started ploughing oxen, hooking up oxen to ploughs, we could create agriculture on much bigger areas. So it wasn't just the domestication of plants, it was the domestication of animals as well, provided this enormous power boost. And one of the main features of the agricultural revolution, for the first time, we produced surpluses of food. Yeah. So if there were surpluses of food, this is very different from a hunter-gatherer society where we're living in groups of, say, 20 to 70, moving quite regularly around different places and getting the food that we needed for the time. And now in agriculture, we could produce more food and store some of it. And then not everyone had to be involved in the creation of food. We begin our sedentary lifestyles. Okay, let's continue. Right. Okay. Now, we've seen this before. Yes, this is our geological time scale. And this has got it arranged in eons, eras, periods, and epochs. Okay? So, we're here in the Holocene. And the Holocene started 12,500 years ago at the end of the last ice age. Look at that. Cool. Feel like I'm in year 1 learning to write. Okay. Now, this is the end of the last ice age, and this is also coincides with the start of agriculture, but it's no coincidence. Here we got a lucky break. Again, more chance. We got a lucky break. The end of the last ice age gave us an opportunity as a species. So, and of course, we also will finish this semester looking at the next epoch, or the current epoch, which is the Anthropocene. So, the better you know, again, we need to know that eras, eons, eras, periods, epochs, yeah. Then we need to know what the eons were, what the eras were. You know, the more knowledge we have of this is the better. Yep. Okay. Okay. So, and geologists set these. So this is why it's a geological timescale, because geologists check these times. They set them. So it's only in recent times that geographers have settled that we are at the start of the Anthropocene. And in time, in another 500 years or so, geologists will look back and go, well, when did the Anthropocene start? And they'll pretty much pin it down to the very early starts were with agriculture, but certainly the domination that was pre-Anthropocene, but certainly the Industrial Revolution will be when the Anthropocene starts, okay? All right, so know these. Be familiar with these terms and how they're broken up. Eons, eras, periods, epochs. MA, yep, millions. No, millennium, mega annual, yeah? Okay. So these times, again, they're very precise, yep? And it's evidence-based. We've done this with determining the rate of decay. There's a whole lot of testing we can do with radioactive decay, with with thermal as well. We can identify when something last saw light through the deterioration of isotopes. There's a lot of fantastic techniques, but it is all evidence-based, yeah? So these time periods are really, really precise because we build them around evidence. So this is a really important part of how we understand the Earth's history. So let's just have a look at some of the big eras, okay? And I recommend that you be able to fit this detail into your narrative. You know how we're all building a narrative? I hope your narratives are coming along. You should be able to tell the history. And remember, when we're building our narratives, we use the thresholds as chapters, and there's got to be interesting points throughout each chapter. Well, these are critical knowledge. So understanding the era and the key feature of that era. The Pleistocene era. Well, this is where we started to see the earliest use of tools. Yep. So from 3.3 million to 11,650 years ago, is the Pleistocene era. Making sense? So you've got these notes, remember? But this is the key knowledge. So what happened about 11,000 years ago was the beginning of the Holocene, and we had a warming event. Climate on Earth changes a lot. We know that, okay? And we did have our last ice age was about 12,500 years ago. But in most recent times, climate's changing at an alarming rate, and that's due to our influence. But this really changed things, okay? The start of the Holocene. And we did cross a major threshold in BHP language. From extensive to intensive technologies, yeah? So if we think of extensive, we think of hunters and gatherers. Imagine if you or I, and our families had to go to live off the land in a hunter-gatherer society, this type of way. How long would we last? Well, people, our species, oh, sorry, I need to be up here. We can generally last around 3 weeks without food before our bodies start to really deteriorate. Yep. And from about 9 weeks, you'll die without food. Our bodies can cope about 3 days without water. So that's why when you're sick and you're vomiting and got diarrhea and stuff, and fever, or generally feeling ill, you should always be sipping water, because we need water. It's really important. So imagine we go and live off the land in a traditional lifestyle. How long would we last? Well, not long, I'd imagine. Not long. And we'll come back to this in a moment. What are the skills that are needed to live in a traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle? Well, they're extensive. You've got to know every season so well. You've got to know how species interact. You've got to know where to be at the right times, and it's knowledge built up over thousands of years. And so we see a shift from that extensive knowledge to intensive knowledge, where you become highly skilled in one or two things. You become, and we'll get onto that, but this switch from extensive to intensive knowledge, to specialization, from generalization to specialization. And we're at the end of this intensive period. Yeah, we couldn't survive. We don't have the extensive knowledge we need. We don't have the extensive knowledge that Indigenous cultures have gathered. So here it starts from the early Holocene. We start this intensification. We extract more resources off one piece of land that we've ever been able to get. Yep. So what happened? Well, we got an expanding population. Oh, I did it again. Damn it. I can hear you laughing at me and I need you to stop it. Oh, how do I go back there? I keep hitting that one. I don't want to do this one. Just get rid of this nonsense. Right, pen back. Okay, right, expanding population. So this is really interesting. In the last 10,000 years, most humans have lived. Yeah, there was way more humans being alive from that point on, yeah, than there was from this time. Yeah, our numbers are very sparse. Remember, we were down across the whole world to a population, probably 3 days. I love a good snack. Yeah, good on you, Chelsea. You should see that. You should see the path from my desk to my computer. No, from my computer to my fridge. Terrible. Okay, right. So we could really expand, because instead of needing this much land to keep 70 people alive, as in hunters and gatherers, like this is a whole territory we needed to seasonally wander. Yeah. Now we could keep this much land and it would feed or maintain more people. So we started to see a really big expanding population. Really big expand. I'm sounding like Donald Trump. A really big expanding population. Okay. Birth of agriculture. New technologies. Well, we had animals, and that was we domesticated animals. Yeah, and that was a huge boost in technology because suddenly we had power. We could start living in greater numbers. Yep. So remember my little picture. This is what the area that hunter and gathering group needed. Well, suddenly a fraction of that ground could support 10 times, 20 times more people. So we started to live in concentrated communities. And they got bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, villages and then towns. So what's happening? If we're living in denser settlements, the exchange of ideas is much more rapid. There are more innovators around. If you have more innovators, you're going to have more innovation. Make sense? Yeah? There's more innovation. If there's more innovators, you're going to have more innovation. So if we're hunters and gatherers in groups of family groups, say of 40 to 70, and where this is our area, right? And then we've got another group of 40 to 70 in their area, yeah, and another group of 40 to 70 in their area, yeah. The opportunities for us to get together and exchange ideas are really minimal. But if we've got a town full of people, well, the ideas move much more quickly. Now, this is where it gets interesting too. This is me using the whiteboard in the classroom and you're on your mobile phones doing your Facebook and stuff all over. Yeah. Okay. So now things don't work like they used to. Yeah. Things are different now. We need a new social. Can you hear the puppy next door? The people next door have got a puppy and it's in that yelping stage all day and all night, by the way. Okay. So we need new structures. We've got organizational problems now. We've got to organize things a little differently. Now, over thousands of years, this agriculture moved and spread around, and it really changed things for us. This is where we see the start of society. Yeah. And we're going to talk about where it started and why. So if you're listening to the recording, you might want to stop and go and watch this now from BHP. It's a good, just 2 or 3 minute overview, but we're not going to watch that together. You can watch it in your own time. So just go over some facts. When did the last ice age end? About 10,000 years ago, 12.5 to 10,000 years ago. Now, population growth caused a problem because we had to find new ways to feed growing populations. So we had to rely on technology. Yeah, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves now to, here comes the growth ethic. We need to get bigger and better. We need new ways of doing things. Why did it happen? Well, it was the end of an ice age. Everything became warmer, and we had a really stable climate for a very long time. The Halocene's been an unprecedented level of climatic stability. Yeah, we really lucked it. Not only did we luck out with the weather, but so did some plants and animals that lent themselves to domestication. Yeah, poor little puppy, driving me mad. Okay, so some plants and animals really helped us. Oops. And because of that stability, we could start relying on crops. Yeah. The ancient Aztecs knew they'd get corn every year. They could rely on it for hundreds of years until the corn stopped. And then this is how great civilizations fail, because we became reliant on one or two plants, one or two sources of water. And if that stuff eased up, then the whole system fell over. Why does David Christian talk about the energy bonanza? Well, because of photosynthesis, yeah? There were sort of two energy bonanzas. One was with food, yeah? We suddenly had a lot of high protein food at our beck and call. So we were taking energy from the sun, and through intensive farming, we were converting much of that energy from the sun through photosynthesis into the plants we had, into that energy, into chemical energy, which we could use. Yeah? So it was a real bonanza. But the only other thing I'll say is horsepower, but of course it probably wasn't horses, it was more like ox to start. Yeah? Okay, so where did it start? Well, farming started on the Fertile Crescent. And why did it start there? Why in the Fertile Crescent? So we'll look at some other maps, but here's an ancient map. You can sort of work out where we are. Here's the tip of Africa, the Middle East, and here's the Fertile Crescent along the Tigris and Euphrates River, near the Gulf of Persia, yeah? Modern day Iran over here. Right, why here? Why here? It wasn't because these people were superior. It wasn't because this was a special breed of Homo sapiens with advanced genetics. You know, it wasn't some sort of freak of evolution. They weren't smarter. It's just that they found themselves in this climate change with permanent river sources and rich, fertile floodplain. Yeah. So it made things really easy to grow if you had the right technology and you did the right things. And we'll come to that. Does that make sense? So this is one of the places where it started. And there's what I just said. So we started to see the earth warmed. That was suitable here to adopt some agriculture. Once we started adopting agriculture, we started to get confidence. We started to get a boost in population. Yeah. So this is where the first city-states started to appear. And it's mostly through a freak of geography. Okay, we've got to remember this all the time. Why there? Because conditions were right there. Yeah, the transition from a hunter and gathering lifestyle was easy and beneficial there because of this circumstance and the conditions. Here it is. Here's some more. This is the same area, but on a map of the world today. Yeah. So this idea of domestication too. And how did we domesticate? Well, what do we know about DNA? Yeah. Yeah, we chose attributes. Think of the example I gave you of the brassica. Yeah, remember the brassica? It started off as wild mustard. You know, from wild mustard through to broccoli, cauliflower, kale, the devil's food. Hey, do you know how this is sorry? Do you know the devil's? Do you know how people talk about the devil's lettuce? Yes. Who knows what the devil's lettuce is? Nope, you haven't heard the devil's lettuce? Yeah. Does someone online want to say, who knows what the devil's lettuce is? It's colloquialism. It's another word for, does someone, Chelsea, do you want to type it up? I'm sure you've read it some. I will. It's just another word for dope, for marijuana, the devil's lettuce. Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay, I heard someone the other day talking about the devil's dandruff. And of course, that was heroin. Oh, I didn't spell that right. Yeah, funny, isn't it? The devil's lettuce. And we're chatting about it. I think it was the kids, and I've got adult kids, and I'm talking about, oh yeah, and that person, he's got a bit of a problem with the devil's dandruff as well. And I'm like, what? Yeah, the devil's lettuce and the devil's dandruff. Anyway, back to this. Sorry. Okay, so we did genetic changing. We played with genetics. We got we got some wild cattle, you know, and we got them as babies and raised them up, pinched them from the wild, and then go, well, this one's a bit quieter than that one, so let's breed from this one. Well, this one's a bit aggressive, so we won't breed from him or her. Okay, so we bred for placidness, right? We did the same for plants. We started breeding things. We started not playing God, but we just started enhancing natural selection, right? And here we go again. Here we go. We got this energy bonanza. We started really capitalizing on the energy of the sun. We started to intensify. It's a good story, isn't it? So here we go. In BHP language, what are the ingredients and the Goldilocks conditions? Well, the ingredients were increasing dense communities. And we don't mean dense as in the poorer Western suburbs type of colloquial downgrading statements. We mean dense as in high numbers. And we did have great knowledge about the environment, right? Because to live as a hunter, and I'm going to change this. I don't like talking about hunter and gathering. I think it's gathering and hunting, because most of the food came from gathering, and that was mostly women who did that. Hunting was important and provided a lot of stuff, but it was really labour intensive. And our study of anthropology shows us that it probably wasn't all that great, but it also just indicates that history was written by men, you know. So it's more hunting than everything. But to live as a hunter and gatherer, you have to know the environment. You have to know the seasons. You have to know where the water is. You have to know everything. You might remember this one. You might live on this. This might be your area for your 30 or 70 people, but you know pretty much every inch of it back to front. And it's not just what you know. Collective learning's been going on here. So it's really hard to fully understand or fully appreciate the knowledge of Indigenous cultures, especially those that are, well, hunter and gatherer societies or Indigenous cultures, especially those that are still practicing it, right? So to go from this knowledge was absolutely critical to move into agriculture. But not all the time. Okay, so we had a warmer climate. That's just a freak of geography. Yeah? And this really good news for us, because we were down to about 10,000 people worldwide, you know, really good news for us, because plants and animals proliferated. And it was just another good bit of luck. Many of the plants and animals that got through the Ice Age lent themselves to domestication. There are some animals we can't domesticate. We can't domesticate deer, right? It's just too hard. They're so, and if you've seen a deer farm, you know, it's like a zoo more than anything. Huge fences. You got to move the deer early in the morning or late at night. You got to not make much noise, right? We haven't been able to domesticate them, but there were other animals we could domesticate. Increasing competition. Okay, so foragers were forced to find new ways to increase from their environment. And the new complexity, animal domestication, villages and cities. Okay, here we go. We've got more to do. I'm really liking this story. Good so far? Good stuff?
Hi, Robert. Not Robert. Oh my goodness.
John.
Forgive me, John.
Oh.
I'm thinking about maths. Sorry.
You're thinking of that? Well, that's better. I don't mean mine being mixed up with maths. That's okay.
Sorry, right. I've got an exam coming up, but I was just thinking about it.
No, that's fine. I'm only teasing. Go ahead.
The Goldilocks conditions, it said agrarian civilizations. What does that mean?
I'm going to explain that. Where are we? Here, yes. Okay, I've got a whole slide on that coming up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But it's based in agriculture. So civilization's based in agriculture, agrarian.
Okay.
But I'm not going to disappoint. I have a slide especially for you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, John.
No worries, Lucinda.
Thank you.
All right. So where did this happen? Here's the Fertile Valley. Yeah. Here's funnily enough, where? Egypt. Yeah, the pharaohs, right? Okay. We got here in China, in New Guinea, the Indus River. See the times? In geological sense, this is not long ago, okay? New Guinea, Mesoamerica, so the Aztecs, and in the Andes. Okay, so it's roughly about the same times. Don't get too hooked up about the times. We say roughly the same times, right? And it wasn't they learnt this and passed it on to them. That wasn't happening. That wasn't happening yet. The conditions here, we looked at the conditions there, they lent themselves to agriculture. The conditions here, the geographical conditions, lent themselves to agriculture. Yeah? The conditions here lent themselves to agriculture. All right? So that's why it occurred. In different parts of the world, remember we were all separated, completely separated, right? There's no communication going on there. So here's what was happening. The Fertile Crescent, the Indus River Valley, the Yangtze River, Papua New Guinea, Mesoamerica, and the Andes. I'll just give you a moment to read. And you can see the sort of stuff we were starting to specialise in. Yeah? Okay. So, roughly, what is it? 6,000 years, but in geological time, that's nothing. Okay. What about Australia? Look at this? Nothing in Australia. Now that's being challenged because we're different. We're a really hot, dry continent. So there's two things to consider. It did lend itself to hunting, or gathering and hunting, right? As did North American plains. They lent themselves to hunting and gathering. To make a move to agriculture, right, for most of Australia, to make a move to agriculture as we saw here, right, just didn't make sense. Why? That was to do this type of agriculture here was a death sentence. Yeah? To do that type of agriculture here was a death sentence. Right. So that's why, but there's a bit more to that story which I'm going to get to. But why in Australia? Well, I touched on this the other week. Australia was claimed as terra nullius. It really made sense that the English could take the land because, well, they weren't using it. Look, they were sort of, the noble savage haphazardly wandering around. But that image is pretty good. Check this dude out. He doesn't look malnourished, does he? And it's 250 years since Cook came to Australia, 250 years, just this month. So that, like last month. So that's fantastic. You know Manly in Sydney? Yes? North Head in Sydney? Any yeses and nos? Yeah. Do you know why it was called Manly? This is why it's called Manly. Look at these dudes. It wasn't called Dweebville, was it? These guys were fit. They had a really good life. They were expert hunters and gatherers. But even more recently, we're starting to look at the evidence and discuss that there was in fact agriculture in Australia. Different to other parts of the world, but there was certainly agriculture. Yeah. But to settle down and have that fertile valley type of agriculture, well, the environment didn't allow it. But look at these early images of these guys. They're built. Look at these white guys. They've just spent 6 months on a boat. They're pasty. They're skinny. They're full of disease. Yeah, and look at these dudes. So who had there's no superiority in knowledge here. Well, if there is, I'm not leaning towards the English. Comments? Because some of what I'm talking about now challenges our understandings of Indigenous Australia as we've been taught and learned. And Australia was never ceded. It was never ceded. It was never given up. You may have heard of Myall Creek and the Myall Creek Massacre. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Tama, they did. They lost their cattle. And we'll come back to that. They lost the cows. The cows wandered off from the first settlement. But they survived. And I'll tell you why they survived. So there was wars and stuff. But again, these were an organised, fit people. They were outdone with technology. But it wasn't a case of intellect. Okay, it was a case of access to technology. Now, remember what I said about living to keep a tribe, a group of hunters and gatherers, say 30 to 70, you need a really big amount of land, right? So Indigenous folk had all this land broken up, and we see that now in the nations, Wiradjuri, Yorta Yorta, etc., right? So that meant those times for collective learning to really kick in didn't happen, but this happened building on knowledge over 60,000 years, right? So that's knowledge of an environment. So I'll wind this up a little bit. So if you haven't read this, some of you have, I know, this is Pascoe's Dark Emu. And it's evidence. And it's old evidence looked at in a new light. He's gone back to the early settlers. Not the early settlers, the early explorers' notebooks. And talks about what they saw. Now, it wasn't agriculture in the sense that we're thinking agriculture, or even agriculture we saw in the Fertile Valley, but it was agriculture. You're probably aware of iconic things like the Brewarrina fish traps, for example. There was a lot of agriculture going on in Indigenous Australia. Pascoe talks of early explorers seeing stone huts with tonnage. Whoops, I didn't spell that very well. With tonnage of grass seed or grain. Whoops, I've been on the devil's dandruff. Grain. Yeah. Do you know those cows that got lost? Yeah. Well, funnily enough, they found them in a little rich in some valleys with trees are being cleared, and there was long grass, and there was the clear water, and the white explorers go, "Oh, that's fantastic!" And they found plenty of these things. They thought it was a gift from God, but it wasn't. Those valleys, those grassy valleys, were there as the result of 20,000 years of burning off, controlled burning. Does that make sense? So where do those cows go? They went and found some of these valleys that Indigenous people have established over tens of thousands of years. So this is a gap in BHP, which I'm sure you've all seen. I think David Christian actually talks about Indigenous Australia, and this is science. This is evidence. We have more evidence now. That story's got to change, and I'd encourage you to read this book. It is out of print. There is Young Dark Emu, which is a young adult's book. It's not a kid's book. It's still a very, very good read. So until they do a reprint of this, have a look. But remember, it's not saying Australia was farmed like the Crescent Valley, the Fertile Valley, the Fertile Crescent, right? It wasn't saying it was similar to South America or the Andes. But what it was saying is it's less understood than it should be. All right? Anyway, I'll leave that there. I think that's an important point though. So why was agriculture so important? This again, 10 minutes, really good summary of what we're doing. But note the Australian aspect is developing. Yeah, there needs to be more in that space. But if you think BHP's 10 years or so old now, you can understand how evidence travels. So, and I use Pasco in another subject, so I'm quite into it. Okay, whoopsie. Right. So let's just talk about a couple of things now. Let's talk about symbiosis. You all know, Finding Nemo. Yep, clownfish, and they live in anemones, and anemones are poisonous, except to these guys. Yeah, they're not. The sea anemones, poison doesn't affect them. They've learned to live with it, but in return, they look after the anemone. Yeah, so it's symbiosis, right? They get protection from other predators by being able to live in the anemone, and they get to clean up and look after the anemone as well. So symbiosis. So we have symbiosis with a range of plants and animals. So these physical and genetic changes, we adapted. Yep, we got wheat, just as a rough example. We developed corn. We developed corn that required lots of water, and we could provide that water. Yeah, that's why we got corn with nice big cobs, because it wouldn't survive on its own. Make sense? Yeah, we bred cattle that were so docile, right, that they would hardly survive in the wild. Yeah, think of a Cape buffalo fighting off a lion. Well, the milking cow's not going to do that very well, are they? Yeah. So the other thing that we've got to remember, why did it happen in some places? Because there was high population. It was a good place to forage, so populations grew, space became harder to get, and it did lend itself. Now, I haven't got to agrarian society yet, but I'm going to. Why couldn't humans just migrate? Well, where to? Where we're going to migrate to? Couldn't, you just go to the same problem. So climate change made it possible. Overpopulation made it necessary. So here we go. I think it was Tess. An agrarian civilization is one that's based on agriculture or farming. Okay? So that's an agrarian civilization. So what happens once we domesticate animals? Increase food, increase resources, and settle communities. And we see a spiral in collective learning, because suddenly not everyone's out foraging all day. Yeah? Yeah, someone can develop skills in using wood. Someone can develop skills in grinding the grain. Someone develops skills in baking the grain, the flour. So it was the end of hunting and gathering in some places. If we go back to the Fertile Crescent, right? Really good conditions for farming and gathering, or hunting and gathering to start with, but then the population increases and then everything else is just right for, well, how are we going to get more this week? We can't pick it all day. We start growing it. Does that make sense? Crops sustained. Villages, towns, cities, and then even empires. Yeah? But when did empires fall over? When their crops failed. As we're experiencing today, what happened if you're a hunter and gatherer and you're living in a family group and you're moving around vast areas, right? You've got an advantage over disease. What happens if a disease breaks out here? Well, we're seeing it, we're living it, aren't we? Yeah. So moving to farming wasn't all devil's lettuce and lots of bread, right? It was really tough because if we got diseases, and this happened repeatedly, diseases would emerge and wipe out whole towns, whole villages, nearly, but the ones that survived had resilience to it. Yeah? Does it make sense? So these communities in what we call the old world developed immunities to the common diseases. When we went to the new world, South America, Australia, yeah, these diseases wiped out these other populations. Because we got food, hunters and gatherers, you can only have a certain number of infants in the group, yeah? And certainly women couldn't be tied up. You'd have one infant, and because of lactation and fertility and breastfeeding, all that sort of stuff, women in hunters and gatherer societies would breastfeed their young till they were 5 or 6, you know? So there was a big gap between babies, yeah? And that was good because you need to be mobile. You need to be moving. You can't have 5 kids under 5 when you're living in a hunter-gatherer society, but you can here. Yeah? You can here. So population goes up really, really quickly. And then we start to see the diversification of labour. Yep. Someone made the clothes. Someone made the tools. Yep. Someone group became skilled in the building. Make sense? We start to see stratification as well. Okay? Once we've got grain, we need someone to store the grain. We need someone to look after it and distribute it. That person has power. Yeah? So now we start to see a business class emerge or a ruling class emerge. Then we see soldiers. And then how do we get all this stuff? Well, we have very limited science understanding at this stage. So there's some deity up here who is giving us all these gifts. And so we see the emergence of religion and priests, and the priests become the conduit between the deity and the people. We see tradesmen and craftsmen, peasants and labourers, and we see slaves. Slaves, very, very early on. Very, very, slavery has been with us for a very, very long time. Okay, so this is what happens. This is the stratification of society. We've got the farmers, servants and slaves, and most Egyptians were farmers. We had the scribes and the tradespeople and the craftspeople. Then we had the nobles. And then we had a king or a ruler or a pharaoh. And in this case, the deities became the pharaohs. And the priests became the intermediaries between the pharaohs, the gods, and the people. Yeah? Make sense? Good story? Anything to add? Anyone want to comment, say anything? Yeah, it's pretty logical, really, when you think about it and you sit back and go, okay, this is how it happened. But then the next thing is this. Thanks, guys, for your comments. Okay. So how do we know? Well, we know from archaeologists. I did watch Indiana Jones the other night, but this is archaeology. You know, remember Lucy? Why is Lucy called Lucy? Well, here they are digging away, something like this. You got the radio on. It's pretty back-breaking, hard slog investigative work. It's not running around with a whip. But how do we know? Well, we've found some of the remains of the earliest agrarian societies. We've found evidence of plant and animal domestication in Jordan and Mexico, 6,000 years ago, longer, 12,000 years ago, in Mesopotamia. Did you like my attempt at humour? Okay, things really started to change now because remember this one? Remember collective learning, right? Well, we started to learn to write. And we've got readings from the earliest societies. This is the Phoenician alphabet. Yeah. So not only could we just tell things from one generation to the next, we could write things down for other generations to access from long ago. And that includes us. So from our Phoenician syllabary and alphabet, okay, this is how the other languages applied. Yeah, does it make sense? Okay, Kate, bye. What's the time, by the way? Someone? How am I going for time? I haven't got a clock on me. Someone want to give me a comment? It's 11? Okay. We're half an hour out of finishing. Okay. So somewhere in here too, so these are all these languages, yeah? And they can all be traced back to a Phoenician syllabary. And you can see where there was a dominant empire like the Greeks, yeah? Big push on. And then the Romans with Latin, yeah? Big push on and lots of different influences. Okay. So this is where this is just the language. This is the written language, yeah? This is where we started writing things. Let's get into cities and states now. And this little 10-minute video is a good one. So what's David going on about? Again, you might have to watch this video to make sense of these questions. Population goes up, complexity increases. We're already trapped in this growth cycle, yeah? From early days, we were trapped in this growth cycle. And when did the big empires collapse? When this broke, when the crop failed, when the rivers stopped flowing, when the rivers changed direction over hundreds of years. Yep, and that's where we saw these empires collapse. An agrarian civilization, again, test. So remember, we've gone from hunters and gatherers in family groups of around 50 to a small village, to a town, to a city-state, to an empire. And what do we know about agrarian cities? Well, we've got the city, we've got the big architecture, we've got governments, hierarchies, tax, armies, peasants, riding, and of course, slaves. So the whole thing's become a big network now, yeah? And society's stratified. So hunting and gathering, gathering and hunting. Well, here we are again, and I've used these images, and I just want to talk to these images, okay? And this image just represents this, you know, for a family group to hunter and gather, we need a whole lot of space, yeah? And Australia is a good example where the geography wasn't suited to intense farming, so that space had to remain. Yeah, we can only have a certain amount of children. Our population's limited. Yeah, some hunting gathering societies practiced geryoncide, which is knocking off old people like me, or infanticide if there were too many young. But in a hunter-gatherer society, a woman can only have one child sort of every 4 or 5 years. So the population growth is limited. Don't underestimate the role that women did in the food. We often hear about the men hunting, and that was a significant protein boost, but labour intensive. Yeah? And we can learn that from anthropology, from studying tribes today. Right, so the gathering was very, very important. Yeah, and again, it's women. Right, all these guys go hunting, they might bring back something, they might not bring back something. What they do will be good, but these guys will always have something. And it comes from a knowledge of the land. Remember that land? Yeah. Intricate knowledge of what's in this land, when it's ripe, where it's available, where you find it. Yeah. And Australian Indigenous societies and Indigenous women have fantastic knowledge. Making sense? So, we're in the final run, folks. We're in the final run for today. Let's start pulling it together. Oops. The end of the last ice age was really important. We saw something quite dynamic happen demographically and technologically. And what happened here shaped the worlds we have now. So what happened 10,000 years ago set us on this path to our life now. Why did communities of foragers take up agriculture? It's difficult. They probably had some of the skills, some of the foraging skills, some of the knowledge you needed for farming was already held by foragers. But we did find after the Ice Age, there are a lot of animals and plants pre-adapted for domestication. In some places, it was better to remain foraging. Yeah. And this wasn't all easy. It was hard work. And your diet was very limited. So this is the extensive to intensive transition. But what it's certainly not about intellect. It's about opportunity. There's a devil's dandruff again. Joking. It's about opportunity. It's about geology. It's about geography. Yeah. But that's hard to remember because we often associate words like primitive to Indigenous societies. And that's a challenge for us to move out of that discourse. Does that make sense? Questions? We've shaped a language of society that looks at Indigenous cultures, hunters and gatherers, as somehow primitive, and the next step to that is inferior. Yeah, and the next step to that, the opposite of that is dominance. Yeah, superiority. Okay. So, I've talked about domestication of animals. Here's the present day. Here's 10,000 years ago. That's a bit longer than 10,000 years ago. Dogs were pretty early in Eurasia. Dogs were domesticated pretty early. A really good symbiotic relationship. About 10,000 years ago, we started to see goats, cattle and sheep, pigs. Then came cows, llamas in South America, horses in Central Asia. I'll talk about horses in particular. Yeah. So it's all pretty modern. Again, it comes back to climate change. We had to experiment with new technologies. We encouraged sedentarism, which is sedentary, you know. We had time. So some areas had to become a bit nomadic. They could do intensive stuff, but had to keep moving on. You could keep your cows, but you had to keep moving them on. You could keep your horses and goats, but you had to keep moving them on. There's a fair bit of text for you to read. But this idea of thinking about the early universe and making it parallel sort of discussion with what happened in the last 12,000 years. Yeah, so just like a galaxy grew, so did the towns and cities grew. You can come back and look at that. So agrarian societies have dominated the stories for about 5,000 years. Yeah? And this is where the ancient civilizations emerged. Yeah? Not coincidentally, around where agriculture could take off. Yeah. Just a word on Africa. Do you know at the turn of the 1800s, and Africa was been constantly fought over from colonizing countries. Yeah. Nearly all many European countries, and Spain and Portugal and France and England, and Germany have all colonized sections of Africa at different times. Why? Because if you think of Africa now, you think of, desolation and famine and just poor land and stuff. At the 1800s, Africa was the bread bowl of Europe. This is why these countries fought over it for so long, because there was so much grain and resources to be taken out, which they did for nearly 2 centuries. And then, funnily enough, when all the resources were gone and the lands were depleted and nothing was much, oh, congratulations, you can be an independent country now, we're done with you. So, you know, there's an interesting story there. There's a question here from T. I might be a hippie. I think foragers had it better. Yeah, well, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy and it didn't work everywhere, but a lot of groups chose not to. Yeah, they chose to remain. Right, and the compromise, I guess, is being nomadic. Yeah, taking the best of both worlds with you a bit. But I tell you what, early agrarian life was shit. Particularly, and remember slavery. There was only a dozen pharaohs. Let's go to Egypt. There was only a dozen pharaohs, but there were hundreds of thousands of slaves. Yeah. Okay. Right. So there's a lot to get our heads around. So we're still pulling it together. Towns, village, town, city, and still about 50,000 years ago, we saw the first city-state. Not 50,000 years ago, sorry. About 8,000 years ago, we saw the first city-states with 50,000 people in them. That happened in a very short amount of time from when agrarian society started. So we think of some of the big empires, the Roman Empire, the Persians, the Mongols. They all had to expand. Conquest. You had to get new territories. As you got bigger, you needed to get more space. So we hear of all the great dynasties, and they all failed at some stage. And that's only some of them. Don't forget there's the South Americans as well. I want to talk about Genghis for a minute. Genghis Khan, the Mongol. Fierce army, rapid empire. Just some interesting things that happened. These guys revolutioned war. So he was fighting the Chinese, okay? And they had massive troops, right? And they learned, and as with the Romans, so you had phalanxes of troops, hundreds of troops all organised, yeah? Men ready to go. And what did they need? They needed food, armoury, food, clothes, yeah, right? They were pretty effective fighting force, but they had this long train of stuff that had to come with them. These guys were like lightning, horsemen. And each horseman would have one or two horses, or one or two extra horses. And one of those horses would always be a mare, a female horse, right? These guys were light and fast, but they also were freaks. They were lactose tolerant. Now, lactose tolerance, that's an error in DNA. If you're lactose intolerant, any yeses without revealing anything too much? Who knows of a lactose intolerant person? Yeah, congratulations, because you're true to our evolutionary ancestors. Because mammals are raised on milk, right? And it's usually specific to your species, but we can all tolerate milk while we're infants. We can all tolerate, most of us, high percentage of us can tolerate mammalian drink when we're infants, right? But then our genes kick in and we can't tolerate it. Because naturally enough, you can't live on your mother's milk for the rest of your life, you know? So our species is by evolutionary standards intolerant. So don't go, if you're lactose intolerant or know someone lactose intolerant, don't go thinking you're different. It's the people that are lactose tolerant that are different, right? And this gene, this lactose tolerant gene, was evident in the Mongols, which meant they could live really well on cheese. And they could live really well on a high protein cheese made from horse milk. It's mammalian milk, they can drink it. Yeah. But this is one of their key, this error in DNA was one of the key successes to the Mongols and the Mongolian army. They developed the gene for lactose tolerance. Does that make sense? It's just really interesting how things work. So if you are lactose intolerant or know someone that's lactose intolerant, you're not different. You are actually not a freak. Those of us who are lactose tolerant are the freaks because we had the error in the DNA. So there you go. Hope you feel better if you're lactose intolerant. But it's really interesting how these little quirks play out in history, how this science works. This is why this army was so mobile. They could be horsebound. They didn't need this big line of support. You know, they could just ride in on hundreds of horses, hit and run. They carried their food with them. There's a little pack here, and in that little pack, he's got a whole heap of dried cheese and dried fruits and stuff that'll sustain him. That's why Genghis Khan's army was so powerful and mobile, because it was different to what others had done. And why was it different? Well, majority of them had this DNA error that was passed on in that community about being tolerant. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Right. So what do we need to know? Okay, you've got this PowerPoint, yes? So you can come back to this PowerPoint, right? So these are the things you need to know moving forward, getting ready for your test. Yep. Big tick, you know most of it. But this should be weaving into your story now, your narrative. It's not a matter of just memorizing random facts. Try and weave this into your narrative, yeah? This is part of your story. I know you might be feeling like this. All right, it gets better. Okay, again, from threshold 7, we've got to start weaving this stuff into our narrative. Yeah? Right? Yes, I know, feeling a bit like that. So next time, okay, what happens with agrarian anxieties? Well, we can break the world up into 4 major zones and we can start looking at the modern world. Yeah? But this is for next time. Okay. Whoops. And show. Discard. Okay. Questions? How many are still with us? 24, you're still with me. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, I'm going to stop. Questions, comments, questions. I do want to talk about crystal clear. Oh, thanks, Tess. Hey, John, you'll be uploading Threshold 7 PowerPoint. I thought I had. Sorry, Threshold 7 PowerPoint. There. My understanding, it's there. Can you not see it? What? Why can't you not see it? Let me just turn this off. Yeah, you should be able to see it. Maybe do the old reset, log off, log back in. Yeah, it takes a little while. Yes, Sonia, you're bad. Just picking on you. Okay, so I do want to talk about assessment 5. But I'm happy to answer any questions or comments. I know we've covered a lot of ground, okay? We've gone for evolution, we looked at our species, and then we've zipped through to agriculture and why it happened. And this is an evidence-based story. And it's supported by well, here, this was supported by the fossil record, right? This is supported by fossil record, if you like, but it's also by the records, by what was written. Yeah? Make sense? And again, and we did this thing on languages, and there's more to do. Like, I'm just touching the surface. Remember, you've got to go through and find out more on BHP. But with this languages, this is the written language, okay? So when we talk about the spoken language, most of us, well, the dominant language in the world is English. And how did that get started? Its big hole. Well, this is the written language, okay? So just push that to the side for the sec. Okay, there was a group of horsemen. There was a nation, like a village, think agrarian societies that were on horses. Okay, I can't do my drawing anymore. But anyway, they spoke a dialect. It wasn't English, but it was the basis of English. But they were really good traders and horsemen, and they got around. So why did English, the very, very basic, very early versions of English, and it's only traces of it left in our English now, but why did that become popular? Because they got around, they were trading. If you wanted to trade with these guys and you had to learn English. Well, wasn't English, but the early version of a language. So because these horsemen were really good traders and really good horsemen and got around, you know, that's how languages spread, a bit like diseases. Yeah? Okay, so I haven't been quiet for very long. Any questions? Feel free to turn on your microphone, unmute your microphone and speak. Feel free not to. Feel free to put something in the chat room. And then I'm just going to bring up threshold 5 stuff. Not bring up, but, you know, highlight it. Nope, no questions. I knew I was a good teacher. Okay, well, thanks, Liesl. Do you want to ask the question or wait for me to give a little blurb and then start? Last Friday, you showed us the averages for the test and assessments. Where do I find that? Yes. Right, tomorrow. I'm going to put it up tomorrow, Josh, simply because the test closes tonight and so does the survey, because I've got some information about the test averages and the survey, but I might be able to show some of what I'm going to put up. That might help. Okay, Liesl, fair enough. I'll get started. Did you see the threshold essentials? Did you like the threshold essentials? I did put this up. I sent it to you in an announcement. I'll just open it up. Did you see this one I put up? Yeah. Again, it's from the unit guides. Okay, it's from the unit guides, but it is pretty useful. Good. Glad you got that. I sent it in an announcement. Go through your old announcements. I'll put it. I think I've put it up. Oh yeah, I've also put it here. Look, if you've lost it. Okay, or didn't find it. So where was I? I have been having trouble with Word. So I'll just show Josh what I've got for roadmap, I think it was. So this is coming out tomorrow, Josh. I'll just upload it a little. But Word's been doing stupid things, so sorry about this. Yep, it's doing stupid things. Sorry, I just got to stop that. Sorry. Okay, I'll get that to restart. So anyway, I'll kick on. I'll come back to that, Josh. Okay, mate. Yeah. But it's just the averages. And I also put in I've also want to include your responses to the survey, okay? Right. So where do we go? First off, writing tips. I put up this ebook. You don't have to read the whole thing, but certainly there's 20 pages there which cover writing scientific reports and journal articles. You've got the template. Start with the template, okay? So if you need to know where do I start, open up the template, have a play around with it. It's pretty straightforward. And I'll put in the template a description for each section. Science reports follow a fairly standard pattern, right? With headings and structure. So you've got yours here. I hope it opens up. Word's been really giving me the shits. Oh, it did. Look at that. It did for a minute, then died. Well, that's useless. Damn it. All right. Okay, you can have a look. Oh, it did work. Now it's going to open 15 times. The template's very clear. Great, Liesl. Great. So you need to start on this. Do a little Google lesson yourself on how to use updated content, because at the end of every time you save, you just need to go up here and update your table. All right. Now, just read through each of these sections so you know what you've got to do. In fact, I would just leave that there and do your writing underneath it. And then as you complete each section, you can get rid of that. This is just a guide, okay? We're trying to get to 2,500 words. The methodology, we're going to write some sections of it for you. So there's some more help coming. The results, well, it's really going to be about what you found in the articles that you've read, okay? And the same with the discussion. Now, just go easy. I'm going to do a little segment on each bit that needs to be in here and what you're going to do. But what you need to do right now is start looking for, do some Google Scholar searching on climate change and your species, right? Google Scholar. Don't pay for anything. Do not pay. Just go through CSU Library. If you find an article outside CSU Library, just cut and paste the heading into Primo, okay? Right? You're not buying any articles. But I think you should start looking for Google Scholar, climate change in your species, and you'll come up with some things. We're going to certainly put some sections up soon, okay? So if I get rid of that now, and a big part of this is climate change, of course, right? Big part of this is climate change. We went to the Academy of Science for the pandemic. So we go to the Academy of Science again for climate change. This is the best text you can get. It's been around for a while now. It's just, you download it as a PDF. I've got a copy of it pretty much by my bedside. It's my constant reading thing. You must understand the information in here. Yeah, this will help you craft your assignment. Right, and then there's this general guide on good writing. The work here in your PowerPoints was very good, right? The PowerPoint stuff was very good. We saw a lot of good moves towards paraphrasing. But I'd encourage everyone to come back to this, how to paraphrase and how to cite, right? So watch that, everyone. There is a unit, there is a module on climate change as well. It's in the module on modelling, right? It's in the modelling one. It's just a heading below all the pandemic stuff, but I've cut and pasted it in here as well. So work your way through this as well. So that's what you can do. Now, more help is coming. More help this week. I will put up a little how-to section for each of those sections. for your journal article. All right. So we'll give you some words for some sections, and others I'll give you fairly explicit examples of what a section would have. But you're going to need to find articles on climate change and your species, your identified species. Now, Liesl, have I answered your question? Or have I made more questions? Right, not quite. Okay, Liesl, hit me. What's your specific question? And then that might encourage other people to ask questions as well. You can talk, you can undo your microphone and speak, or you can just put it in the question box.
Hi, John.
Yes, hello.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can, loud and clear. Thank you.
Awesome. So with the more help that's coming, should we wait till that comes before we start collecting data?
No. A key part of your data is going to be articles, okay?
Okay, so we're not actually collecting like observational data.
No, that's handy, right?
Okay.
So what have you been looking at?
Well, with my species, I was just looking at some research, and I found that there's not a lot that actually relates to the species that I'm thinking of doing. So I'm
What's
doing
your species?
So it's a species of lichen in at Mount Canobolas.
Right, that's right. You've got the lichens, and it's a tricky one. Yeah. And I was just wondering, like, with the research, how closely it has to be related to our species. Would it be better to pick a species that's got a lot of research on it? No. I'll help you with yours. Help you as in direct you to some good research. Yeah. And yours is, I mean, your experiences will factor into this. Okay, I've started doing this. This is what I did. And with my... And then I found that there wasn't much information. But this is what we know generally about lichens.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and these are the things we need to look out for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So have you done a lichens Google Scholar search yet? And
I have, yes.
Climate change?
A bit on like lichens in general, but I've just been looking at, I think there's like 3 sources for the ones that the species that I've looked at, that's in orange locally. So
great. So one of your key things on discussion and your findings then is going to be need for more research on that area.
Okay.
So one of your recommendations is going to be, I can tell already, there needs to be more research on the impact of this.
Sure. Yeah.
But what we've learned from other places is that something's going to happen and it's not going to be good.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot more sense. I was just thinking about like, how do I actually collect data? Like in some journal articles actually undertake scientific research.
Yep. So that's a good point, because when we do those Google search articles, we're going to be identifying ones that have done some research, right? And we're going to investigate their data. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're going to go, okay, so look at these guys. This is what they did. And this is what they found.
Yeah.
And so we might do it with 3 of them. So here's 3 articles and look what they found.
Awesome.
So the implications for me are, well, we could go this way, but the reality is, in this instance, we just don't have the data on lichens.
Sure. Yeah. So we're looking at other people's data, not our own.
Yeah, but you'll be able to talk about your experiences.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I've got a couple of colleagues, biologists, and I'll be writing to them too and get some help.
Awesome. Thank you.
It sounds really interesting. I remember yours now. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Good questions. That would have solved a lot for a lot of people, I think.
That clears it up a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks, Liesl. So what you need to do is start getting some articles together. All right. And looking at what research has been done. What research has been completed so far? What have people found so far? How does that relate to your experience? You know, what's your experience tell you about data and how hard or how easy it is to get? Yeah? Okay. Right. Any other questions? Yes, Charlie, you can use some of the data you've got on your own, but how we'll do that is we'll be able to say, well, Rafferty and Bell found blah, 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 blah. In my limited research, in my, small sample, my work correlated with that. Yeah. Or my work didn't correlate with that. Yeah. Yep, good. Yeah, so that's why you'll have your own data and you'll go, oh yeah, I understand the difficulties involved with getting this data. Yeah, so there is a part for your data. Don't forget with your citizen science as well. Okay, don't forget with citizen science, go back to their website, see what data they have available. And I'll start doing some stuff on ALA, which is Australia Living Atlas as well. And we'll be able to get some information from that too. Okay. Is it due on the 29th? Good question, Josh. Just always check the. Yes, it is due on the 29th. Yep. Okay. So we've got about just over 3 weeks. 3 weeks to put it together. Yep. Oh, I think that's plenty of time. So start now with Google Scholar, your species, and climate change, right? And we've got some other stuff coming. There'll be lots appearing this week. So keep your eye on the little threshold 5. I'll put an announcement up to say something's in threshold 5 in the folder, assessment 5 folder, and you can come in and get it. Yep. And there will be some sections for the methodology that you'll be able to cut and paste in as is or juice it up a little, depending on what you want to do. But we will be doing some comparisons of existing data. Okay? So we'll be looking at, you'll need to be able to say, okay, these 3 studies found, right? Okay? So I know it's a bit hairy at the moment, but I haven't been wanting to talk too much about it till we've got assessment 2 done and dusted. Okay, and now we'll start putting this together. I also would urge you all to look at the online sessions. Today's been recorded. There is someone in the room at these times all week. I'm doing a repeat on Friday. Pop in. You'll be able to talk to someone. We'll be able to look at your work, or we can arrange a more suitable time. A couple of people last week popped in. Our Port Macquarie people, and they had specific questions, and Mim was there and she says, okay, let's find some time that suits where we can spend 40 minutes, 30 minutes one-on-one sorting out this. So back to you guys. You've really got to start getting this into shape now and make use of these times. Pop in and ask questions, or use that time to pop in to set up a time to talk. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just about done. I can see some people starting to leave, which is fine. Any other questions? And was this useful? Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Tess. Thanks, Beck. All right, fair bit to go on with. Let's get cracking. Thanks, Sonia. See ya. Hope the garlic's going well. Did you get a frost up there? It was frosty in Wodonga today. Okay, don't be too stressed, Chelsea. Talk to us, okay? I'm not trying to stress you out. You've got to talk to me about what's going on.
John?
Yes.
Just another quick question.
Sure.
I was just wondering about like how like I think one of the other lecturers brought up a table of like people being sorted into depending on their species to
Yeah, we're
allocate.
working on that. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. Great.
we'll put that up with
Will
some
that,
resources. Yeah,
great. Will that affect like who we discuss things with?
not really.
Okay. We can do that with anyone. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Cool.
But obviously, well, it's more like anything marine.
Yeah.
Be smart to go with Min, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything wildlife, Rose,
Yeah.
and anything more general, me. Anything botanical, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just
Him.
wondering, like, with the drop-in sessions, would there be like a specific person in each one or something like that?
Oh no, we still haven't worked that out. There's
Yeah,
usually
sure.
two of
No
us
worries
in
at
there.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah, great. Thank you.
no problems. It'll be good. Thanks, Brooke. Thanks, Jane. So thanks, Josh. That information's coming. I'll try and open it now if you're interested. Where is it? I'll see if this opens, Josh. I'll be able to show you, but my Word keeps crashing on me. Oh yeah, here it is. Are you still there, Josh? So this one's got to be updated, and this one is too because we're still marking, but they're just the averages. Is that what you meant? Yeah, no worries. So there's 45% of marks out, I guess. So you should be able to judge where you're at, knowing that there's 55 still to come. Technically, you could be on 0 and still pass this subject with the 2 remaining assignments. You too, mate. Cheers. Let's work on this. How you going, Tess? You all right? Thanks for your contributions today, Tess. It was really good. You too, Liesl. Thanks for taking the plunge and opening the mic, asking very good questions. Yeah, catch Hey, Rose.
Hey, John.
How you going?
Yeah, not too bad. That was pretty good.
Yeah, a lot to cover. We've got to get crack. I'll do a lot on assessment 5 this week, today.
Yeah. Well, we just need to get through the other assessments first.
Yeah, and we're marked. Yeah, it gets too confused and puts pressure on people if they're struggling with assessment 3 and we start putting stuff about assessment 5.
Yeah.
It can freak them out.
I know as when I was in undergrad, that stressed me out.
Yeah, and we're going to give them heaps of stuff. Look, they'll end up doing, the method will end up being some desk research.
Yeah.
About 3 studies, and they can draw in their own experiences.
Yeah.
And I think Liesl's is a really good example. Like, she's taken on lichens, she's gone out, she's looked for different types of lichen, and she's just found no literature.
Yeah.
About the lichens on Mount Canovus. So it'll be really great finding. We've got a big gap in our knowledge here. So
absolutely.
She'll do really well, and that's what we'll try to encourage them.
And it kind of shows that if there is no information in that area, that's where we need to go.
Yeah, because we follow the evidence. So it'll be fine. I'll start today putting stuff up.
Yeah.
I'll finish this off tomorrow. It's just a little roadmap.
Are we still recording, John?
Oh, yeah. Uh-oh. How do I stop? How do I stop recording? Damn it. Over here.